And yesterday I gave you my top 10 undervalued DC Comics. Today I'm going to give you top 10 overvalued DC Comics. Number 1, most obvious here too. Superman 75, Death of Superman. Yeah, this book was printed to nauseam. There are a million out there, and there are additional reprints. Fun fact, a lot of the reprints are more valuable than the first print. For your health. I was at a comic book shop, and I am not going to tell you the name of this place. Looking at the books on their walls, their prices were terrible. At this point, I was in the back bins. This dad came in with his son, and the dad saw the Death of Superman issue 75 up there on the wall, and he was telling his son, I remember this book, like this was so cool. They killed Superman. The kid was like, what? That's crazy. You know what the price tag was? $50. I was in the back of the store just like shaking my head. I almost wanted to be like, hey dude, don't buy that. I might have one in the car. Yeah, but for whatever reason, this is still a $20 all the way to apparently $50 book in that more 94, 96, 98 candidate class. And I feel like a $10 price tag should be maybe the limit. Oh well. Next up, Detective Comics 585, the first appearance of Ratcatcher. Now, if this were about 3 years ago, this probably would have been on an underrated list. Whatever reason, this book blew up. Raws go for anywhere from $25 to about $50, which is really weird when I think about how much I used to pick that up for like $1 or $2. Someone paid $500 for a 9.8, so you're telling me that the first appearance of Anarchy, Detective Comics 608, is only a $100 9.8, but the first appearance of Ratcatcher is $400 higher than this. That's crazy. I'll put a link to my undervalued books there where I mention Anarchy's first appearance. Oh, this one's going to be controversial. Okay, Dark Knight Returns, number 1. It's excellent. I'm not saying any of these aren't excellent. I love The Death of Superman. I like Ratcatcher enough. This book was heavily printed. It was on a heavier paper stock, which makes it more easy to score a 94, 96, 98, which means every time I find this book in the wild, it's still pretty nice condition. I have yet to stumble across any of these even in mid-grade. Everything I find is high grade. Why then does it command a $200 to $250 price raw? That's absolutely ridiculous. Frank Miller, I'm sorry. Next up, first appearance of Simon Baz. We got New 52, issue number 1, free comic book day version. It was a free comic book day. These were given away for free in large amounts. It is the first appearance of Simon Baz, and it's a little hard to get that 9.8. However, to charge $30 to $40 for this free comic book day book seems a little bit on the high side, especially when Simon Baz has really been taking a back seat in the more recent years of Green Lantern stories and DC Comics. Let me know in the comments, are you spending $40 to get this free comic book day high grade? I don't know. 20,000 subscriber giveaway. Superboy 0 and Superboy 9, the first cameo and first full appearance of King Shark. Next up, another one I love, but it doesn't mean it's not overvalued. Catwoman 51. Is it worth $500 in a 9.8? And should you be spending $200 on a high-grade raw version? Can't judge ya. It just seems a little ridiculous that's a massive overpayment for that book. I tried to do some research on a print count for this, couldn't seem to find it, but I can tell you that there's a bunch of graded copy of these on the census. I've owned a couple myself that I submitted myself, and you better believe I did not pay $200 for that book raw. Gorgeous cover, kind of a must-have in most collections, especially if you're one that chases for the art. However, it's just that price tag's gotten a little out of hand, I think. Next up, you knew it would be on this list. Batman number 1 from the New 52. Minor key at best, but it's just issue number 1. You know how many Batman number 1s there are? A lot! Despite it, I still see this in comic book shops listed for $50. New creative team, that storyline was fantastic, guys. The whole early New 52 Scott Snyder stuff, chef's kiss. But $50, come on, dude. Next up, Swamp Thing 37, specifically the newsstand. This is one of the more valuable books from the 80s. It's the first appearance of John Constantine, and I actually agree with the direct edition prices where they're at. It's about a $200, maybe on the high end, like a $250 book for that really crispy high-grade copy of the direct edition. The newsstand edition, people pay like $400 for. This is 1985. The ratio of newsstand to direct copies It's only about like 40 to 60%, just a little less than half, I would say. Maybe surviving copies of newsstands would be a little less too. I remember last summer a direct edition was going for like $2,000, but the newsstand was going for like $8,000, and that's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. If this were like a 1990 or 1991 book, I could maybe understand some of those crazy jumps in the newsstand prices, but it's 1985. Next up, JLA number 1. Another one on this list that I love. I pretty much love all of them. However, this sells for about a $15 price, and I think that's a little off. It's great. It made the JLA cool again. This was a very popular run in the later 90s. It's hardly a key once again, and frankly, you can find a ton of them. It just doesn't really make sense that you'd see a $15 price tag on that to me. Fun fact, this run of JLA actually has some of my favorite DC stories in general. Next up, Batman Damned, book number 1. This book got popular because of the Batwang. That's right, guys. The first printing of this did show fairly prominently Batman's junk. Because of that, the book ends up being like a $50 book. Here's the problem with that. This was DC's first black label book, and they printed a lot of them. I think I still got one. They were anything but few and far between. They were still selling for a little bit there before they released the next batch, which didn't show it so prominently. There's a decent amount of, believe it or not, CGC 9.9s and even 10.0, like a perfect gem mint of this book. So I feel like a lot of people will grab this issue number 1 and pay a premium for it, $50 for a raw, just to try to submit it and get that really cream of the crop CGC or CBCS grade. That could play a factor into it for sure. Last but not least, we got Harley Quinn number 1, the 2000 issue. This is her main solo series. Harley Quinn had decently been in the comics in probably like 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 comics leading up to this point. So it's not a second appearance, it's not a third, it's not a fourth, it's not a fifth. She was already semi-decently established by the year 2000 when this finally came out. People actually spend like $80, sometimes $90 on a really sharp copy of this. What's the significance of this? Just the first issue to her own run? Yeah, I suppose. 80, 90 bucks? I don't know. That seems pretty overpriced to me. Now what's interesting about these prices is they're driven by supply and demand. So while I think that some of these are overpriced, there is a reason they are what they are. Supply and demand has brought them to this point. So it's not unheard of. I just think that maybe market manipulation or certain elements created too much of a hype and too much pizzazz about these books. Some of these books, there's just too damn many of them for them to be justifiably these prices. I'm sorry. Batman New 52, number 1 for $50. Come on, man. Anyway, guys, look, keep on collecting what you love to collect. That's first and foremost. But just make sure you're not way overspending. And as always, guys, keep on hunting.